So Congress has just introduced a new federal bill that would effectively end online ammunition sales nationwide. This new bill is called the Stop Online Ammunition Sales Act of 2026. And if it passes, this bill would require face-to-face ammunition purchases, impose federal licensing on ammunition dealers, and mandate, this type of reporting of bulk purchases to law enforcement and potentially the federal government. So this isn't just a minor regulatory tweak. This is now a fundamental change about how ammunition and these type of purchases will operate going forward in the United States. So let's talk about what is going on exactly in this bill, what it aims to do, and what the text says about this bill generally. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe. Also, you can click the like button. That just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content. So if you're watching this video, click the like button. I also want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to self-defense protection, in my opinion, AOR is in a league of their own. They're backed by an actual law firm, the Attorneys for Freedom, and they're always trying to expand their benefits and give you as much as possible as a member. One of the new things that they added is they're guaranteeing 4 attorneys to your self-defense case if you have a membership and you find yourself in one of these situations. So if you're interested, check them out using the link down below. And if you use my code ARMSCHOLAR, you can get $25 off of your signup fee. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about HR 7166 that was introduced in late January and is referred to, currently to the House Judiciary Committee. And again, this is the law which aims to regulate ammunition sales nationwide going forward. We now have the official text of the bill, and it's exactly what we thought it would be based on some prior iterations of this bill. This bill amends 18 USC section 921 and also section 923 to expand federal firearms licensing requirements to include ammunition. That means that ammunition dealers would now fall under the same federal licensing framework that FFL and those type of dealers also have to fall under. This also means more ATF oversight, more compliance requirements, more potential enforcement exposure. And this is not just regulating transactions, it also expands federal regulatory control over ammunition commerce. So one of the big parts about this as well is restricting, how ammunition is shipped, how it travels interstate. And that's one of the ways that they're trying to do this, which essentially is a tie into the Commerce Clause. But even more concerning is the impact that this bill will now have on consumers. The consumer restriction really is the centerpiece of this bill, and the general aim of this bill is to stop online sales of ammunition and restrict, how you purchase ammunition and, the quantities at which you purchase ammunition as well. The bill amends federal law to make it unlawful for a licensed importer, manufacturer, or dealer to transfer ammunition unless the transfer occurs in the physical presence of the buyer, and the dealer also verifies a valid photo ID of the purchaser. That effectively ends direct-to-consumer online, ammunition sales. And even if you purchase ammunition online, the transfer must then go to an FFL, and your possession of it has to happen in person with ID verification. This essentially is a nationwide in-person mandate and does away with the historical way that a lot of people, purchase ammunition, which is potentially online and then just having it sent directly to your home. This bill also amends section 922A2 to prohibit shipping or transporting ammunition except under the new regulated framework. This is very significant as well because again, it's restricting and doing oversight about how ammunition is transported and shipped nationwide. Now, here's where the reporting regime actually comes in, and this is one of the scary things that this bill essentially seeks to add in. This bill adds a new subsection, which would be 18 USC section 923G3, and it states that if a licensee sells more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition to an unlicensed person at one time or within 5 consecutive business days, the dealer must report that transaction and that purchase to law enforcement. They also potentially have to report to the Attorney General, state police, local law enforcement, whoever is responsible for getting that report. And it must be submitted by close of business on the day that the multiple sale occurs or when the bulk purchase occurs, at that location. So what does this mean in practice? Well, this bill does 3 major things. It ends direct online ammunition shipments to consumers, expands federal licensing and regulation controls on, the purchase of ammunition, creates a federal reporting trigger to bulk ammunition purchases. And remember, this would apply to 1,000 rounds, whether you buy it all at once or in a 5-day business kind of span. And again, purchasing 1,000 rounds of ammunition is not unusual. You could potentially purchase 500 rounds of, 9mm and then 500 rounds of 5.56 223. And, that would fall within the bulk purchase, restriction. And then you would have to report that, or really the FFL would report that purchase to law enforcement and the federal government. And again, people buy more than 1,000 rounds often for training classes, competitive shooting, or simply because they're trying to get some good deals online, or maybe through, a retailer. If they have good deals, people often purchase a lot of ammunition just to save some money. And so essentially this turns common and lawful behavior into a reportable federal event. And that's really the entire goal of this bill. Now let's talk about what happens if this passes. The Supreme Court has already recognized that the Second Amendment protects the right to acquire arms. And essentially without ammunition, the right to keep and bear arms becomes very hollow, because you need ammunition to make a firearm operable. Now under Bruen, once conduct falls within the Second Amendment's plain text, the government must show a historical analog and a justification for this type of restriction. So the legal question then would become, is there a historical tradition of banning remote online purchases and sales? Is there a founding era analog for mandatory face-to-face verification? And is there historical precedent for reporting bulk ammunition purchases to the federal government? Those are some very serious constitutional hurdles that I do not think the federal government can overcome, because this would be something completely new that would pop up for the first time in our nation, outside of maybe some isolated states like California that have put in place ammunition background checks, but those have only been in place very recently. So, there is no historical analog for this type of thing that this bill aims to do nationwide. Now, the government would likely argue that this is commercial regulation under Congress's Commerce Clause authorities. But again, post-Bruen and this type of litigation essentially suggests that once the Second Amendment conduct is burdened, historical analysis becomes central, even if the regulation is commercial and even if it's tied to the Commerce Clause. So this bill would also most certainly face immediate constitutional challenges. But the big question really is, does something like this even have legs to make its way through Congress? Essentially, right now, what Democrats are doing with this bill is they're trying to create a backdoor ammunition ban through this type of access restriction, essentially trying to create burdens in supply chain issues and just general fear about purchasing ammunition. It targets the supply chain, the transaction method. Instead of banning ownership, it is trying to regulate the acquisition pathways. And modern Second Amendment doctrine makes an acquisition just as important as actual possession. Now, right now, this bill is in committee. It must pass through the House, pass through the Senate, and then also be signed into law. And, really no pun intended, but we always have that trump card with, President Trump. I don't think he would sign something like this into law if it even made it through the House and the Senate. So it still has a very long road ahead of itself. Maybe the midterms and, based on some changes in Congress, maybe this gets some legs. But still, we have the president there, hopefully with the veto power. But still, this is something concerning that we need to keep our eye on, because we've seen states like California do these ammunition restrictions. There are other states that have done similar things. This is now proposed at a national level, and this just signals maybe an anti-gun kind of playbook where they're trying to put in place more ammunition restrictions. They're trying to do it at a federal level. And then now we're seeing this slowly kind of play into more and more states who are trying to copy this type of playbook and just do it at a state level. So that's what HR 7166 actually does based on the statutory language. Again, it ends online direct-to-consumer online sales, expands upon federal licensing, and then also has this reporting of bulk purchases, which again would be very concerning. So as this moves forward, as we get more information, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm. Just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this type of content and should share it to more people. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.